Have you ever stopped to consider whether the life you call your own truly stems from your choices, or if, in reality, it has been shaped by silent forces you haven't even noticed? How often have you believed you were in control, when in fact you were merely reacting to invisible impulses, repeating patterns inherited from stories that aren't yours? Perhaps you pride yourself on the freedom you think you possess, but what if that freedom is just an illusion, ingeniously orchestrated by the very reality you unconsciously create? There's a question that insists on echoing, even if you try to silence it. What if everything you've lived up until now has been nothing more than your own creation, made without you knowing you were creating? Imagine, for a moment, that every thought that crosses your mind is like a seed cast on fertile soil, and that every emotion you nurture is the water that decides whether that seed will flourish or wither. Now, think about how many dark thoughts you've allowed to grow within you. How many fears have you watered until they turned into tangible realities? Perhaps you haven't realized it, but the fear you felt in the silence of the night, the insecurity that echoed repeatedly in your mind, the resentment you silently harbored, all of this organized itself into shapes, people, situations, events. All of this took form on the stage of your life because you, unknowingly, were rehearsing the main act. That of someone who creates their own reality without realizing they are the author. But there's something even more unsettling. It's not just about the conscious thoughts you recognize. It's the shadows, the instincts, the small, forgotten daydreams that shape your reality in silence. It's when you think, even for a second, I don't deserve it. This isn't for me. It's going to go wrong. And the universe, impartial as a mirror, responds, yes, so be it. The world doesn't question whether what you feel is fair or true. It merely reflects. And so you continue to walk, believing you are being punished by fate, when in reality you are being faithfully served by it. What if I told you that every conflict you've experienced, every frustration that seems to have arisen from nowhere, was actually an echo of what you vibrated internally? There's no accident in how things repeat. There's no coincidence in the cycles that insist on returning. The relationship that always ends the same way, the opportunity that slips from your hands at the last second, the emptiness that returns to occupy your mind even when everything seems fine, none of this is an accident. It's just you conversing with the universe without realizing you're speaking. You shout without words, and the universe responds without warning. Reality is not a mystery to be deciphered. It's a reflection, as precise as a mirror that doesn't lie. Think about this. What if all along you were building walls around yourself, believing you were just protecting yourself? Every time you distrust, every time you resist, every time you think something is too difficult or too distant, an invisible brick is placed in that wall. Until one day you look around and realize you are trapped, surrounded by walls erected by your own hands, and yet you still insist on asking, why is my life like this? The answer is harsh, but simple, because you designed it that way, even if you weren't aware of it. And don't think this is limited to negative things. Even the most beautiful moments in your life were born from vibrations that you, at some point, chose to nurture. The unexpected friendship, the love that arose when you least expected it, the opportunity that seemed impossible but suddenly materialized, all of this is also your creation. The universe doesn't distinguish between light and shadow, between desire and fear, it just responds. But if you haven't noticed this until today, it's a sign that most of your life has been shaped by automatic impulses, not by conscious intentions. And this is where the discomfort begins. Who would you be if you learned to truly choose what to create? Perhaps now you're remembering moments when something inexplicable happened, as if a part of you had called it closer. The improbable encounter, the feeling of having lived something before, the dream that came true. These episodes aren't mere whims of chance. They signal that you are constantly sending messages to the invisible fabric of reality. Except that most of your messages aren't written with conscious desire, but with unresolved emotions, with unhealed fears, with memories you insist on reliving without realizing it. It's painful to admit, but perhaps you've spent years believing you were a victim of circumstances, when in reality you were hypnotized by your own creation. How many times have you looked at your life and thought, "This isn't what I wanted"? But, if you observe carefully, you'll realize that somewhere inside you, at some forgotten level of the mind, you vibrated exactly that. Not because you desired it, but because you feared it. Not because you wanted it, but because you believed it was inevitable. The universe doesn't hear words. It feels vibrations, and the strongest vibration always wins. Fear screams louder than fragile desire, and that's how, without realizing it, you create a life that seems to be against you. Now, the question that won't be silenced: how many of your current pains are not punishments, but responses? How many of the problems you face are not penalties, but echoes of what you vibrated repeatedly? And the most unsettling, if you already create realities without realizing it, what would happen if you learned to create consciously? What would change in your life if you understood that every detail, from the grandest to the most trivial, is a reflection of what you emit? The whole world would change, or maybe it would be you who would change, and with that the world would have to bend to your new frequency. You may feel an internal resistance arising now. The mind likes to believe that there are external culprits, that there's a blind destiny that commands everything, that we are just passengers on a boat we don't control. But this narrative is comfortable because it absolves us of responsibility. Assuming that you create your reality even without realizing it is like facing a mirror without filters, without illusions, without excuses. It's confronting the fact that every part of your life is, in some way, a reflection of yourself. And that's scary. Because if it's true that you create without realizing it, it's also true that you always had power. And perhaps what frightens us most isn't weakness, but the awareness that we are stronger than we dare to admit. Maybe that's why you're still here, listening to every word. Because at some deep level, a part of you already knows that there's no accident, that there's no victim, that there's no luck. There's only creation. There's only vibration. And within you there's an immense, untamed force that already creates every day without asking your permission. The question isn't whether you create your reality or not. The question is whether you will continue creating in the dark, or whether you will finally decide to turn on the light. Have you ever noticed how certain patterns seem to haunt you like shadows that refuse to go away? The face changes, the scenery changes, even the time changes, but the feeling remains the same. As if life were a vicious circle that insists on turning until you realize something hidden there. But what if these patterns weren't punishments but reminders? What if reality was trying all along to show you that you are the creator behind the very repetition? It's not about bad luck. It's not about coincidence. It's about echo. You speak, even in silence, and reality responds. And when you ignore the response, it screams louder and louder until it becomes impossible not to hear. Think about the times when you believed something was inevitable. The end of a relationship, the loss of an opportunity, the betrayal of someone you trusted. You said to yourself, "It was obvious that this was going to happen," as if you already knew the ending before you even started. But maybe it wasn't divination. Maybe it was creation. Because by expecting the pain, you brought it closer. By fearing the fall, you prepared the ground for the tumble. What we call destiny may just be the reflection of what we cultivate in silence. And the more you resist this idea, the more trapped you become in the invisible spiral that leads you to the same endings as always. The human mind loves stories. It seeks explanations, narratives, culprits. But reality doesn't need narratives. It's too simple for that. It just reflects. Imagine a mirror that doesn't care about your appearance, doesn't judge whether you like what you see or not. It just shows. If you smile, it smiles back. If you cry, it cries along. The universe works the same way. It doesn't ask if you want what you vibrate or not, it just returns it. The problem is that you learned to look at yourself in that mirror and believe that the reflected image was independent of you. You didn't realize that the reflection only existed because you were there first. But there's something even more disturbing. It's not just your conscious thoughts that shape your life, but the underground of the mind, what you bury and pretend doesn't exist. The trauma you never faced, the guilt you don't admit, the anger you repress in silence, all of this becomes active vibration. You can pretend you've forgotten, but the vibration doesn't forget. It continues to emit signals, calling situations, attracting people, building scenarios. And when you wonder why certain pains repeat, the answer is harsh, because you still carry them within you, even when you believe you don't. Imagine yourself as an invisible antenna, capturing and emitting signals all the time. Each emotion is a frequency. Fear tunes you into realities of loss. Anger connects you to realities of confrontation. Guilt traps you in realities of punishment. But love, when true, opens doors to realities of abundance. The question isn't whether you emit signals, but which signals you have been nurturing. And perhaps this is the most painful part, realizing that often you nurture fear more than desire, lack more than abundance, pain more than hope. And that's why your life seems to lean to the wrong side, even when you swear you want the opposite. What if all this is just the beginning? What if every reality you live is just a draft of what you can truly create? Think about how many times you settled for crumbs because you believed that was all you deserved. Think about how many dreams you abandoned because doubt spoke louder. What if I told you that none of this was inevitable? That, in each of those moments, you could have vibrated differently, thought differently, chosen differently. The question isn't whether it was possible, but whether you were ready to assume you had power, because having power isn't comfortable. Having power means no longer having excuses. And perhaps that's what you've always feared, realizing that you were never powerless. There's a detail that few realize. The unconscious doesn't distinguish between imagination and reality. When you imagine something intensely, your body reacts as if it were real. Your heart races, your hands sweat, your breathing changes. And if the body believes, the universe also believes. Every time you see yourself failing in your mind, every time you repeat dialogues of pain and silence, every time you relive bitter memories, you reinforce those invisible realities. The future isn't created tomorrow. It's born from the images you nurture today. You're already living in the future, only in a future shaped by old fears and never nurtured desires. What if you could break this cycle? What if, instead of repeating unconsciously, you chose consciously? The question isn't just believing in something better, but feeling something better. Because the universe doesn't respond to the words you say, but to the frequencies you emanate. You can declare 1,000 times that you believe in abundance, but if inside you vibrate fear and scarcity, the reflection will be of scarcity. That's why many get frustrated with ready-made phrases and superficial affirmations. Reality doesn't bend to empty words. It bends to genuine vibration, the one that's born from what you really feel. And here arises the greatest paradox. To change reality, you need to change yourself. It's not about controlling the external world, but about mastering the internal world. The chaos you see out there is just a mirror of the chaos you haven't faced within yourself. The limitations you find on the way are projections of the beliefs you haven't questioned yet. Life isn't against you. It's by your side, showing you where you still need to free yourself. Each obstacle is an arrow pointing inward. But as long as you keep looking outward, you'll remain trapped in the invisible spiral. Now, answer in silence. How many times have you sabotaged yourself without realizing it? How many times have you given up before even trying, because you already saw yourself failing? How many times have you accepted less than you deserved because you believed you couldn't more? These small concessions, these almost invisible gestures are the threads with which you weave your own reality. And when you look around and see the life you've built, you may not recognize it, but you were the one who embroidered every detail. The question that remains is, if you already have that power, why continue using it against yourself? Have you ever noticed that there's an instant, almost invisible, between thought and reality? A subtle space where everything is still possibility, but which, in seconds, becomes concrete, solid, inescapable. This interval is like the breath of a silent god, fast, almost imperceptible, but loaded with immeasurable power. And yet, you live crossing this space without realizing that the key to everything is there. It's in that instant that you choose, even if you don't know you're choosing. It's in that lapse that futures diverge and one of them solidifies before you. How many times have you passed through this portal without realizing you had the chance to choose differently? Conscious desire has always been present in you, but it lives suffocated by dense layers of fear. It's like a small flame trying to resist the wind, hidden behind the walls you built yourself. When you think of something too big, your mind immediately offers excuses. It's not realistic. It's not the time. This isn't for me. You call this prudence, but in reality, it's sabotage. Because every time you reject a desire, you strengthen the fear. Every time you say, "I can't," the universe responds, "Then you can't." Reality is too obedient. It only knows how to say yes to what you vibrate, even when it undermines your own dreams. What if you dared, for an instant, to believe in the impossible? Not as someone who repeats decorated phrases, but as someone who allows themselves to feel deeply the reality they want to live. Imagine yourself, for a few seconds, breathing the life you've always wanted. Feel the colors, the sounds, the smells of this new version. Observe how your body reacts, as if it were already real. At that moment, something changes. You stop being a victim of the invisible spiral and become a conscious co-creator. This experience isn't fantasy, it's rehearsal. And the more you rehearse, the easier it becomes for the universe to believe along with you. The secret has never been in forcing the external world to change, but in persuading yourself to vibrate differently. Conscious desire isn't a timid request, it's a declaration of identity. When you affirm, with all your being, that you already are, the universe doesn't argue, it just reflects. But you need to sustain that identity even when everything around you seems to deny it. That's where many give up. The old reality continues to insist, showing evidence that nothing has changed. But that's just the inertia of the reflection. The mirror still shows the old version because you haven't sustained the new one for long enough. Think about how many times you gave up right at the moment when you were about to cross the portal. How many times you abandoned the dream because the proof didn't come fast enough. The universe doesn't work in the time of haste. It works in the time of consistency. It asks, "Do you really believe?" And it tests your answer in every silence, in every absence, in every apparent contradiction. If you give up, it understands. It wasn't real. But if you persist, if you continue vibrating even when nothing confirms, you give the definitive signal. This is my truth. And then, reality has no choice but to bend. The paradox is cruel. You're already creating your reality all the time, but you only reap consciously when you sustain desire above fear. Fear is always louder, always more convincing. It uses the past as proof, failure as an argument, doubt as a shield. But desire, even if silent, carries greater power, because it's not born from control, but from expansion. Fear wants to keep you small. Desire wants to push you beyond what you believe is possible. The question is, who will you give more energy to? Both ask for food, and both create realities. Maybe you think you need to see to believe, but the order is opposite. You need to believe to see. This is the greatest challenge of the human mind, trusting in what hasn't materialized yet. It's precisely in this leap of faith that the power of creation manifests itself. Faith isn't blind belief, it's conscious vibration. It's sustaining a frequency before seeing the reflection in the mirror. It's deciding that the new version already exists and behaving as if it were already real. It doesn't matter if logic screams, if reason doubts, if others mock. Logic is limited, but consciousness is infinite. Reason measures probabilities. Consciousness creates possibilities. Now, look at your life as it is today. What do you see? Maybe you see problems, debts, pains, broken relationships, but that's just the reflection of what you've sustained so far. What you see isn't a sentence, it's memory. It's the vibrational photograph of your past, frozen in time. If you keep looking at that photograph as if it were all that exists, you'll remain trapped in it. But if you dare to look beyond, you'll see that the next frame is already waiting to be painted. The question is, will you continue replicating the same colors as always, or will you finally mix new paints? Conscious desire is the brush. Vibration is the paint. The canvas of your life is always in the process of creation. And what you call destiny is just the sum of the brushstrokes you gave without realizing it. But now, perhaps for the first time, you are invited to paint deliberately, no longer as a victim of circumstances, but as an artist of the invisible. And in this process, you discover something forceful. There's no savior, there's no external hero, there's no master who carries you to the desired reality. There's only you, in front of the canvas, with the brush in hand. The rest is reflection. And here's the revelation that many can't bear to hear. Creating consciously is simple, but it's not easy. Simple, because it's enough to sustain the vibration. Difficult, because you learned to doubt. Difficult, because you prefer immediate proof. Difficult, because it's more convenient to blame the world than to assume that everything starts in you. But it's precisely in this difficulty that freedom lies. Because if the power is in you, nothing in the world can stop you. No circumstance is definitive, no pain is a sentence, no loss is an end. Everything is reflection, everything is creation, everything is possibility. So, now, silence for an instant. Breathe. Ask yourself, what am I vibrating at this very moment? Fear or desire? Scarcity or abundance? Prison or freedom? There's no right or wrong answer, there's reflection. But no, reality is already listening, and it will respond, as it has always responded, with relentless perfection. The only question is, are you ready to choose differently? What if I told you that you already live fragments of the reality you desire, but you haven't recognized them yet? That the signs have always been before you, hidden in the coincidences you called chance, in the encounters you disregarded, in the dreams you preferred to forget when waking up. Life doesn't scream, it whispers. And in those whispers, there are invitations to cross the invisible border between what you are today and what you can be tomorrow. But how many times have you ignored these calls for fear of seeming crazy? How many times have you given up on what you wanted most just because logic couldn't explain it? Logic is useful, but it's also the most sophisticated prison you've ever built. It offers convincing explanations to keep you within the known, away from risk, away from vertigo. But it's precisely in vertigo that transformation happens. Reality isn't a solid block, it's a dance of frequencies. And when you dare to dance out of the rhythm of fear, you discover that you can conduct the music. What seemed impossible begins to take shape. The improbable approaches. What was invisible is revealed, not because the world suddenly changed, but because you changed your tuning. This is the point at which many retreat. By realizing that reality obeys, the responsibility becomes heavy. It's more comfortable to believe that everything is destiny, chance, or divine punishment. It's easier to blame the government, the family, the economy, the karma. Difficult is to face the mirror and admit, I created this. Difficult is to look at the chaos and accept that, at some level, it was born within you. But it's this admission that opens the door. Because if it was you who created, then it's also you who can recreate. The same force that built the prison is the one that holds the key. And here arises the most incisive paradox. To change reality, you need to first accept reality as it island. Accepting isn't resigning, isn't conforming. It's looking straight ahead, without escape, without excuses, without masks. It's recognizing the prison to then decide to tear down the walls. When you deny what exists, you strengthen it. When you accept, you disarm it. Only then can you begin to vibrate at another frequency, free from the resistance that keeps you trapped in what you don't want. Acceptance is the first step to liberation. But accepting isn't enough. It's necessary to sustain. Sustain when nothing confirms, when everything seems to crumble, when the old patterns return to test you. They always come back, like ghosts of what you once were, trying to drag you to the known. They come in the form of people, situations, recurring thoughts. They are echoes of the past asking for attention. If you surrender, you recreate the same cycle. If you sustain, you cross over. The test isn't punishment, it's opportunity. It's the universe asking, did you really choose differently, or did you just flirt with the idea? And it's at this point in the journey that you need to cultivate presence. Being present is more than living the now. It's perceiving the now in all its layers. It's feeling the thought arising before it turns into emotion. It's observing the emotion being born before it becomes action. It's seeing the action happening before it turns into reflection. Presence is the only place where you can intervene in the cycle of creation. Without presence, you are dragged by the invisible current of patterns. With presence, you are the river and the navigator at the same time. With each instant in which you become conscious, you recover power. Power to choose what to think, to choose what to feel, to choose what to sustain. And this choice, repeated, becomes vibration. The vibration, sustained, becomes reality. The reality, recognized, becomes destiny. But not an imposed destiny, but a created destiny. It's your energetic signature printed on the fabric of the universe. And the more conscious you become of this signature, the more you realize that you were never separated from anything, that the world around you is just you reflected in infinite ways. So, look around at this moment. Every detail, every presence, every circumstance, everything is a mirror. Nothing is outside, everything is inside. That person who irritates you is a projection of something unresolved in you. That opportunity that arises from nowhere is a response to a silent desire you emitted. That persistent difficulty is the insistence of life in showing where you still resist. Nothing is neutral. Nothing is by chance. Everything is a response. The question is, are you willing to listen? Or will you continue treating the signs as noise, as coincidence, as bad luck? The crossing isn't a single event. It's a continuous process. With each choice, you cross. With each thought, you cross. With each sustained emotion, you cross. There's no finish line, there's no arrival, there's only expansion. You don't become a conscious creator once and for all. You recreate yourself at every instant. And the more conscious you become of this process, the more you realize that the game never ends, it just changes level. What seemed impossible yesterday becomes banal today. What seems unattainable now will be routine tomorrow. Life has no limits beyond those you insist on believing. And here is the silent invitation. Dare to cross over, even without guarantees. Dare to sustain the new, even without proof. Dare to believe in yourself when no one else believes. Because it's in that space of courage that reality bends. Not to reward you, but because you finally took command. You stopped being a piece and became a player. You stopped being a spectator and became a creator. And when that happens, there's no turning back. You can never again believe that you are a victim. You can never again hide behind excuses. You can never again pretend you don't know. Because once you cross over, the truth cannot be forgotten. Now, breathe deeply. Feel within you the vibration you choose to sustain. Notice how it already begins to shape the space around you. See how each thought is a seed, how each emotion is water, how each choice is light. You are cultivating the garden of your own existence, whether you want to or not. The difference is that now you know. Now you perceive. Now you carry responsibility and power. The crossing is no longer a distant concept, it happens at this very moment within you. And the question that echoes inevitable is, which version of your life are you about to choose without realizing it? Perhaps you have felt, throughout this journey, that something in you has begun to move in silence. It wasn't just the rational understanding of the ideas, but an internal vibration, as if forgotten memories had been awakened. And perhaps deep down you already know, nothing you heard here is really new. It's just a reminder that you have always been more than you believed you were, that the power to create has never been outside, but pulsing, insistent, within you. And now, reaching this point, you realize that there is no end. There is only an echo that expands in the space of your consciousness and resonates in the silence of your life. Each phrase that was recorded, each unanswered question, each metaphor that still vibrates in your mind, all of this will become part of your gaze. You don't come back the same after crossing over. Not because someone said so, but because you felt it. The world out there seems the same, but it's not. It will never be again, because by watching until here, you changed. And when you change, everything around you inevitably changes too. Reality is a reflection, and the reflection cannot resist the new look that now inhabits you. The next time you wake up, the next time you look at someone, the next time you face a challenge, something inside you will whisper, "I am creating this." And that whisper will be impossible to ignore. The truth is simple and, for that very reason, devastating. Life doesn't happen to you. It happens from you. Everything you see is a mirror of the choices you made, consciously or unconsciously. And, by recognizing this, you stop being a hostage of luck, of destiny, of chance. You become a creator, and a conscious creator doesn't fear chaos, uncertainty, or the unknown. He understands that each shadow holds a possibility of light. So, the question that remains is, what are you going to do with this? Are you going to treat it as just another video? Are you going to distract yourself with the next content, with the next notification, with the next noise? Or are you going to allow this experience to continue reverberating in you, guiding your next choice, your next word, your next step?